like to invite Isabelle Ryckbost to the podium now to deliver our keynote address on European Ports Think Climate. Please, why climate change is important for ports and navigation infrastructure. Isabelle is the Secretary General of the European Seaports Organization since 2013. I note in her bio she studied law, which is just fine. And she has extensive experience in the transport sector as well. So, Isabelle, please.
Thank you. And it's true, I studied law, so don't expect a big climate expert here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and an honor for our organization to be here in this opening session. I would like to thank Bianc for their initiative, for their motivation in this initiative, and I think especially Jan has been very, how would I say, motivating and encouraging different parties, and in a way I think that not many people can do in such a short period. I would like to start my introduction with some figures that are relevant for our discussions today and tomorrow. And I might be kicking open doors partially, but I think in this opening session it's sometimes important. So transport is responsible for more than 20% of global CO2 emissions. And if we look at maritime transport, it's 2.2% of global emissions, international shipping. We know that European ports are nodes of transport, combining both maritime transport but with all the other hinterland modes. And that I think it's also important to say, road, inland waterway and rail. And there are 3.8 billion goods going yearly in and out EU ports. But ports are not only accommodating ships, ports are energy nodes and ports are clusters of industry. And here I would like to mention some results of a fact-finding that as ESPO we have been running in the framework of the Portopia project last year, and which looks into the governance of port, the role of ports, and so on. And for instance, we have seen that 66% of ports host industrial plants. And while these plants are in fact situated in the port because you want to create synergies, you want to limit the transport leg between two companies, they are also producers and users of energy and producers of CO2. Then 25% of the ports of European ports have more than half of their traffic linked to energy commodities. Approximately 1/3 of port authorities are facilitators nowadays of renewable energy, and 16% of port authorities are investing or co-investing in renewable energy production. If we look at the environmental concerns of ports, what ports consider as their main environmental concerns, energy consumption is on the number 2 in the latest top 10 we are monitoring since 15 years, in fact. And finally, it's important also to mention that 78% of ports interviewed considered that it has an aim to ensure that the port activity is sustainable in the long run. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to give these figures to point out why it is so important for ports to tackle climate change, to work on decarbonization. So really climate change, mitigation and so on is a hot issue for ports. And here we have in fact 3 questions that need to be answered. How to become a low carbon port, a carbon neutral port. First of all, ports have a very territorial side, a land side, let's say. So we have to tackle the land emissions. Their ports are part of the Paris Agreement. The climate plans, national and also partially European climate plans will follow. So we will have to work as port authorities on the carbon footprint, directly or indirectly, because it's often we are landlord ports mainly in Europe. So it's asking to the port operators to do something about the carbon footprint. Also, of course, to tackle the hinterland transport modes and the industrial activities in the port. Here, the land side, it's something very controlled in a way, because almost 90% of European ports are very near urban areas or part of urban areas. So you have this pressure, because there will be the local authorities who also, you now see it every day, cities in Europe, regions in Europe, who are developing a plan of, I want to be the first low carbon or carbon neutral city in our country and or in a part of the world. So there is really a pressure on the ports to be part of that. But then there is, of course, the maritime leg. And even if maritime transport is not the most polluting in terms of CO2, it emits CO2. And so the discussions are now going on, as you know, within IMO, but also at EU level, we are really, the European Parliament is pushing for a contribution of international shipping. In the Paris Agreement, there was no explicit reference to international shipping. There has been in October the IMO MEP 70. We consider as ESPO that this is an important starting point. We believe that there should be an initial reduction target in 2018, but by 2023, we should have the target, the measures to curb emissions of shipping. Shipping is a global sector. So the solution is, by far, the global solution is the best solution. But if this global solution would not come by 2023, our organization has also said that then we might have to think about regional measures, because it's urgent, but we really want to stick and say we need a global response, but an urgent response. And there were recently discussions and a proposal in the Parliament to bring emissions from shipping also in the emission trading system. Now there are negotiations between the Parliament, the Commission and the Council. The negotiations will start because the Commission didn't put it in his proposal, the Council didn't put it in their general agreement, but there is really the will, the impatience a bit from the European Parliament to do something and to there have a kind of a figure, a milestone, and so that they know that they also would like to see that something happens by 2023. So this makes 6 years from now. So we believe this is possible. We also think it's important as European ports that something is happening for the shipping sector because it's the image of the whole sector. If you talk about shipping, you talk about ports. If you talk about ports, you talk about shipping, even if ports are a lot more than shipping. So we are, in fact, we should all be allies in finding a solution. But if we want to help also, and that's what also a message I want to give, is it's not shipping on themselves. If we want to green the shipping sector, this often implies facilities that the port facilities will have to adapt, that there will also be certain investments in ports. Be it in terms when you have short-side electricity, LNG refueling points. So there is also a lot of innovation. It's a very quickly moving sector. New technologies. You do not know, is it now LNG that will fully take over? Are there other fuels and so on? So it's a bit a chicken and egg discussion for the ports. Are they fully investing in one technology but then it's not used? So what is important is also that there is a dialogue with the shipping lines to see what is needed, what will be the long-term investment, so that also ports can make a long-term engagement. And then, of course, there are the financial means. Who should carry all these investments? We have a infrastructure policy at European level, transport infrastructure policy. We believe that in the coming years, a lot of emphasis should be put on this decarbonization infrastructure, on infrastructure that is needed or linked to the decarbonization agenda. So there, I think we should work together, shipping lines and ports, to strive for this funding in the European CEF program. Ports can also play a role in encouraging the greening of the shipping sector. We have incentives for greener vessels. There are different tools. Of course, there is the first, the ESI, the Environmental Ship Index, which also has a component on CO2. There is the Green Award, but I think we have to further develop these tools and see that they are used. They are used because ESI, I think it's now 6 years old. I'm looking at 6, 7 maybe already. 6 years old, and as far as I know, there were 25 European ports using it, but it's maybe a lot more in the meantime. 5 more? 50? Worldwide, but in Europe we count them. Last year it was 25, so, but maybe also it goes up, and we hope it goes up. Yeah, okay. And then there is the, of course, within ESPO we have the Ecoports network. We have a green guide with best practices, also in the field of energy consumption, energy efficiency. We have, in fact, what we see is that we have really front runners among the ports. I noted, for instance, Aalborg, who will become the first carbon neutral port in Denmark. Last week was the Netherlands were very active, with Amsterdam also saying some declarations, some engagements towards coal and so on. Then the Port of Rotterdam presented a study on how to decarbonize the industrial activities in the port. We know that Milford, for instance, is heading towards being a carbon neutral port. So there is a lot of bottom-up initiatives. The second question is, what if the climate is changing? Sea levels are rising, extreme weather conditions, because ports are literally on the first row. And then I think, like, are our ports considering well enough this reality when planning new port infrastructure, and also considering the cost, because I can imagine that the cost of these more protected, or of making ports resilient, is higher than before. And here I think that a lot remains to be done. And again, I think that the initiative, this conference today and tomorrow, can help to that, because it's a discussion, because you always have discussion, we want to decarbonize, and it's very negative to talk about adaptation, because it's saying that we won't mitigate. But we believe you cannot ignore it. We all know that with the best efforts, there will be still consequences on climate change. And the third question is, how will decarbonization change the business of European ports? I gave you the figures at the beginning of very important energy ports in Europe. There is also might be of decarbonization an impact on trade in general, also on certain commodities in particular, a big impact for energy ports. And then the question is, will ports play an equally important role in all the new forms of energy as in the traditional fossil energy? Will they also be a big supplier, producer of renewable sources of energy? We believe it will be, but of course it will be disruptive for some ports, and ports will have to prepare for that. Hence, again, important to raise the awareness and prepare, have conferences, have people meeting together. The question linked to that is also, what will be the role of the Port Authority? Because in Europe we have mainly landlord port, meaning they manage the land, and you have the operators in the port, but we do not mix up in such in a very high extent with the activities in the port. So there we should say, how active will or can port authorities be in pushing for decarbonization? And this is a very difficult question to answer, and also probably not all ports will have the luxury to answer the question in the same way. Because if you have an activity who wants an investment, who want to come to your port, but it's a high carbon investment, will you say no? But if you know that there will be, that it's an investment that will create employment, more business for your port. So these are very tricky, difficult questions, but also probably questions we will have to tackle. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope the debates today and tomorrow will give answers, more insight in some of these issues. Beginning of June, we as ESPO, we also have a conference. We are also tackling on the 1st and 2nd of June in Barcelona, also climate. So we hope that we can then also continue the discussion, maybe also contribute to the findings of today. I would like once again to congratulate Piang for this initiative and for bringing together all these people, all these organizations. I would like to thank you and wish you a fruitful conference. Thank you.